I want to just talk about this because you got sent this thing and a clip of a conversation we had here. Now, Jamie's not here today, so
Sam, real quick, just for your listeners, because I want to give the author credit. Back on the affirmative action story, her name was Marie Lee, and she wrote for NBC. I think it's an article that is worthwhile explaining why Asian Americans need to be wary of conservatives using them against affirmative action. So I just want to make sure I put that out there.
All right. Marie Lee. We'll check that out. All right, so you sent me this clip, and it is zero sum has now become my catchphrase on this program. And Jamie is not here, but you want to discuss, and let's touch on this because it is everything we're seeing from the Trump administration, right, is oriented towards Fox. And Fox News is oriented towards, the major policy. There's really two sets of policies that he's carried through, right? There was one legislative victory for the Republicans that is cut taxes on rich people.
Right.
The two major ones that he's done, and the trade stuff is not quite there, is to just simply levy taxes on things. And they're talking about like some type of $30 billion bailout for farmers because they're about to get crunched. And there is no evidence that the tariffs are going to help anybody economically, at least not of his base. The immigration stuff, there's also no evidence that that's going to help anybody, but he's quite convinced it's going to help in terms of the election. And my contention has been, as I discuss in this clip, that not for all the Trump voters, but, remember, 95% of these people voted for Mitt Romney. That what we're dealing with on some level is a loss of social status that is reflected in the culture. You turn on the TV. It used to be when I was a kid, every time I would turn on the TV, some iteration of me was the lead character on every single program. And now that's not the case. And well, here is the brief. Here's a minute-long clip from, I guess it was a couple weeks ago. This comes from. I get it. I totally get it. And I think at the heart of it, frankly, it is people feeling like they are losing their status in society. And guess what? They are. They are. This is a zero-sum game. If you have had an inordinate amount of status as a function of something that has nothing to do with you, but has to do with the subjugation of other people who might be competing against you, broadly speaking, it's not true for every single individual, but broadly speaking, you're going to lose your status when they start getting more opportunity and more voice in society. That's just the reality of it.
Well, it doesn't have to be a zero-sum game, though. Like, I think that's what
when it comes to social status, it has to be.
I mean, status is so intimately tied to economics that, like,
it's not just
the goal of a lot of leftist thought right now is how do we get people to become left populists?
I get that. But the fact of the matter is that every bit of our culture was centered around one specific group of people. And that was not just an economic calculation. It just so happened that those people had the power. So they're going to lose that status. There's just no denying it. It is a zero-sum game.
But why do people feel the need to have a special status in the first place?
Because human beings, I think, like to feel that they are special. And human beings don't like to lose what they have.
It's kind of you got to be careful. You do have to be careful.
Hold on. So, all right. So, Ben, you're special. I mean, your thoughts on this? I mean, because I think like this is not to deny the problems that we have in terms of inequality, of just financial stress that the vast majority of people are under. But, losing your social status in the culture is a real thing. And it's just, some people are going to react poorly to it.
Yeah. So you and I, we have mutual fans, obviously, and one of our mutual fans sent this to me a couple of weeks back. I didn't get a chance to listen to it until this morning when I told my followers that I was coming on your show. He wanted to make sure I talked to you about it. And I listened to the entire 30 minutes. It's a great segment. But I found myself agreeing with you more than anyone else. And the reason he sent it to me is because I have this saying, and I say it from the side of marginalized people, that liberation is not a zero-sum game, right? So for Black people and people of Latino people, it's not, we're not in competition for our liberation, because there's divisions in the Black community that I have to speak on all the time, where you have Black nationalists who think it is foolish for us to stand in solidarity with immigrants. Even if there are such things as Black immigrants, but I digress. So I always have to say this, it's cyclical, particularly with the Trump administration. Anytime he attacks immigrants, we come to their defense because we stand in solidarity. And I have to remind the Black nationalist crowd that liberation is not a zero-sum game. However, social status is more of a zero-sum game. And the thing that I felt was missing in the conversation that you all had that I listened to this morning from back in May was that, there's economic status, but there is social status. There's the culture wars. And for people who are more willing to latch on to the significance of the culture war, of their perceived social status than their own economic benefit, they are willing to see, to buy into the Jordan Petersons of the world, to buy into anyone who's going to kind of assuage that anguish that they are losing their place in society. But the reality of it is that we are coming after the white male Christian power structure in this country. And that's not my definition. That is the definition, but Bill O'Reilly popularized it many years ago. It is a white male Christian power structure, and we're seeking to tear that down. So there are people who economically benefit from it, definitely, and they are going to be hurt because they're being taken out of their position of power. But more than likely, there are so many more white people who don't benefit from that power structure. And the real question is, are they willing to cede the fight, the culture war fight, in order to find some economic solidarity that Marie and Mike were talking about in rebuttal to you?
Right.
Jamie, I'm sorry, I'm thinking about the writer. Jamie and Mike were using as a rebuttal. Will they actually relinquish that fight? And I don't know that they will. I think they actually find some type of utility out of the culture wars, even though economically this white male Christian power structure is damaging to them as well.
I mean, look, we see it all the time. We don't see it as much anymore. There's still maybe CBS or something occasionally, like the older people networks. But that concept of the Honeymooners, right? Well, it's like, okay, he's a bus driver and they're living in it, but he's the king of his castle, right? That's what it comes down to. It doesn't matter if my castle isn't as nice as that guy's castle, as long as I'm the king of this castle. And that's what it was. I mean, it was like when they changed the laws so that my mom could actually get a credit card in her own name, which happened while she was an adult. That meant that my dad did not have the control over her that he wanted. I think, I'm not saying specifically that's the case, although probably was, but that it's a zero-sum game. And in that instance, right? Like liberation is not a zero-sum, but it is for the oppressor.
Yes, exactly. Because we are literally coming after the power structure that benefits white Christian men. We are. And the real question underneath it is, if you're going to look at it from a class critique and actual tangible material benefit, there are so many working class white people who do not benefit from this power structure. And that's the solidarity that we need to find. But instead, it's almost like a substitution or a counterfeiting, in poker. If your hand is counterfeited, it's almost like a counterfeit. They look at the culture war as a counterfeit example of their real status in society, when in reality, they're getting screwed by the system just as much as anyone else, economically speaking.
Economically speaking.
If they don't think about that, if they dismiss that and they really cling to the fact that their relative power with regards to women, that's the honeymooner effect. It's relative power, right? In your household, you are the king of the hill.
Yep.
If that's more important to them, then we'll never tear down the system that's oppressing them as well, economically speaking.
Yes, and I will have to say though, I don't think it's real. It's not. This is not. This is not just vapor. I mean, it's a nice feeling to watch every commercial and be like, hey man, I'm in the middle of this. Like this is like everything is validating the experience of me and everybody else just being a bit player in my life. Like when I'm watching TV, right? Like it's me, the white guy in the middle, and everybody else is just like
supporting cast.
It's supporting cast. And it's nice to walk through life thinking like, this is all about me, and you're just here because you're all part of my dream, essentially. And that's what television's telling me, and that's what the commercials are telling me.
Yep.
Like, and it's not just that. It's also like, when I go into, the clothing store, all the mannequins look like me. And I mean, like wherever it is, it's just, and that's not nothing. Right? And the idea that like at home, like I can say, sweetheart, get me a beer and I'm going to sit on the couch and you finish the dishes. Thank you for serving me. I mean, it's real. It's a real thing that,
I'm sorry.
No,
I heard another voice.
That's basically it. No, go ahead.
Okay. No, I thought I heard another voice there. So I could, co-sign. I can't co-sign the honey, go get me a beer thing because that doesn't work in my household dynamics.
Well, I'm not saying that it's actually worked in mine either.
No,
I mean, I'm separated, but
I had to be sure to put that on the air because in case my wife is listening.
I understand.
But here's the difference. Like, and I agree with you. It's the difference between me watching The Walking Dead and seeing all the black people killed on a regular basis, and it's centered around a white guy. I have to pretend that I'm the hero of the story, even though I'm not white.
Right.
And then watching Black Panther, right? There's like a night and day difference between the two experiences, and I guess that has some value. But to me, we would like to think people are rational thinkers, and I think that's the problem, that people aren't as rational as we hope they are, because you would think that it would be more important for us to focus on a material existence and our economics, but reality around us says otherwise.
Here's the last question though: Is it a question of these folks making a conscious choice that I want to make sure that I'm king of my castle, however I define that, over some measure of solidarity on an economic front? Or is it that they do not believe that there is really any room to change that economic front, and therefore I'm going to stay king of the castle here?
I would offer you a third a possibility with the Charlie Kirks of the world, the people who are pushing pushing an entire new front of support for capitalism and attack against any deviation from what we have right now. I think they firmly believe that this system is preferable to any other system. So now not only are we fighting against the king of the hill mentality, but we're also fighting against propaganda, capitalistic propaganda that is shoring up support for a system that is obviously devastating communities across all racial backgrounds.
Yeah, and to be honest, that system, may very well also be the one that keeps them as the king of the castle. But
fair enough, true, yeah.
Benjamin Dixon Show, available on every podcast platform ever developed and in perpetuity, future ones as well. Thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. Always a pleasure.
Bye-bye.